Captain Jack Reynolds had imagined humanity's first contact with alien life countless times. In none of those fantasies did he envision himself standing in his underwear, holding a half-eaten burrito, when the Zircanian diplomatic vessel materialized in Earth's orbit. "Captain Reynolds, please report to the bridge immediately," the ship's AI announced with what Reynolds swore was a hint of judgment in its synthetic voice. "Of course this happens during my lunch break," Reynolds muttered, hastily pulling on his uniform pants while trying not to drop his burrito. "The first aliens in human history decide to show up during the 30 minutes I get to myself." 10 minutes later, a somewhat presentable Reynolds stood on the bridge of the Improbable, Earth's flagship vessel. On the view screen loomed a ship that resembled a metallic octopus with too many tentacles and not enough aesthetic consideration. "Open communications," Reynolds ordered, straightening his jacket and running a hand through his disheveled hair. The view screen flickered, revealing a purple-skinned alien with 6 eyes arranged in a hexagon pattern. Its mouth, at least Reynolds assumed it was a mouth, pulsated as it spoke. "Greetings, Earth vessel. I am Grand Ambassador Vzork of the Zircanian Empire. We have monitored your civilization and deemed you worthy of contact." Reynolds cleared his throat. "On behalf of Earth, we welcome you, Ambassador Vzork. We're honored to." "Captain," his communications officer hissed, "your fly is down." Reynolds glanced down in horror, then quickly zipped up his pants. When he looked back at the screen, all 6 of the ambassador's eyes had narrowed. "Did you just perform a mating display during formal diplomatic proceedings?" Vzork demanded. "What? No, I was just..." In Zircanian culture, adjusting one's reproductive garments while maintaining eye contact is a declaration of intimate intentions. Reynolds felt sweat beading on his forehead. "I assure you, Ambassador, it was simply a wardrobe malfunction." "And now you deny your advances? This is the greatest insult in the 37 galaxies." The bridge fell silent. Reynolds ran through every diplomatic protocol he'd ever learned, coming up empty. "Look," he tried, "there's been a misunderstanding. Maybe we could start over with..." Silence. Ambassador Vzork's skin flushed a deep crimson. "The Zircanian Empire does not tolerate such disrespect. We declare war on your pitiful planet." The crew of the Improbable gasped collectively. Reynolds, however, simply sighed and pinched the bridge of his nose. "Really?" he asked, his voice eerily calm. "We're going to war because I forgot to zip my pants." "Your insolence knows no bounds," Vzork sputtered. Reynolds leaned forward, his expression shifting from exasperation to something more dangerous. "Ambassador, I've spent the last 14 hours on duty. I've had exactly 3 hours of sleep, 1 cup of coffee that tasted like recycled engine oil, and half a burrito that's now getting cold on my desk. And now you're declaring war on my species because of a zipper." He stepped closer to the screen, his voice dropping to a quiet rumble. "Let me be clear, I'm not even mad yet. But if you want to see what happens when I am, by all means, continue with this nonsense." The ambassador blinked all 6 eyes in succession. You're not mad?" "Nope, this is just mild irritation. Trust me, you don't want to see mad." Ambassador Vzork's transmission cut off abruptly. Reynolds turned to his stunned crew. "Well," he said, straightening his uniform, "I believe I have a burrito to finish." As it turned out, the Zircanians didn't take Reynolds' warning to heart. Within hours, long-range scanners detected a massive armada entering the solar system. The fleet consisted of over 300 warships, each bristling with weapons that Earth's best scientists couldn't even begin to comprehend. "They really didn't like that zipper thing, huh?" Reynolds muttered, studying the tactical display in the Improbable's war room. Lieutenant Mira Patel, the ship's tactical officer, stood with her arms crossed and one eyebrow raised nearly to her hairline. With all due respect, Captain, this might be the first time in human history that a planetary war has been initiated because someone couldn't dress themselves properly. Reynolds shot her a look. Not helpful, Lieutenant. Just pointing out that perhaps your unconventional diplomatic approach might benefit from some refinement. Noted, Reynolds said dryly. Now, what are we looking at? Patel activated a holographic display showing the approaching fleet. Based on our preliminary scans, the Zircanian vessels outclass ours in every measurable category. Their weapons systems are approximately 127 years ahead of our technology. Their shields could withstand everything in our arsenal. And she added with a grimace, they outnumber us 20-1. So we're screwed? Technically speaking? Yes, sir. Completely and utterly screwed. Reynolds nodded thoughtfully. Get me Earth Command. 5 minutes later, the grim face of Admiral Helena Chen filled the screen. Captain Reynolds, I hear you've made quite an impression on our new galactic neighbors. In my defense, Admiral, save it. I've got 17 different governmental leaders screaming at me because apparently you couldn't keep your pants fastened during first contact with an alien civilization. Reynolds winced. That's not exactly. I don't care. Fix it. The entire United Earth Defense Force is mobilizing, but we need time. Your orders are to delay the Zircanian fleet by any means necessary. Any means, Admiral. Did I stutter, Captain? Any means necessary. The screen went black. Reynolds turned to his officers, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Well, you heard the Admiral. Round up the crew. We've got some delaying to do. Within the hour, the entire crew of the S Improbable had assembled in the main hangar bay. They were a motley collection of Earth's finest, or at least, as Reynolds often put it, Earth's most interesting. Lieutenant Commander Diego Ortiz, the ship's chief engineer, was already tinkering with what appeared to be a modified tractor beam emitter. His perpetually oil-stained hands moved with practiced precision as he muttered calculations under his breath. Tell me that contraption isn't going to blow us all to smithereens, Ortiz, Patil said, eyeing the device suspiciously. Probably not, Ortiz replied without looking up. 70-30 odds in our favor. Nearby, Dr. Alara Voss, the ship's xenobiologist and medical officer, was reviewing Zircanian physiological data on her tablet. Her shock of bright blue hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she chewed her bottom lip in concentration. Fascinating, she murmured. Their nervous system has 3 separate branches, and their vision spectrum extends well beyond what we can perceive. That's terrific, Doc, Reynolds said, clapping her on the shoulder. Any weaknesses we can exploit? Dr. Voss looked up with a gleam in her eye. Oh, several, but my favorite? They have an extreme sensitivity to certain flavor compounds. Capsaicin, for instance, is effectively toxic to their respiratory system. Capsaicin? As in hot peppers. Precisely, Captain. Even trace amounts in the air would cause severe discomfort. Reynolds grinned. Lieutenant Harper, he called to the ship's communications and cultural specialist, who was lounging against a cargo container. Still have that collection of hot sauces you smuggled aboard. Harper, a lanky man with an easy smile and a questionable interpretation of Starfleet regulations, straightened up. Sir, I have no idea what you're talking about. But hypothetically speaking, if someone did have such a collection, it might include some ghost pepper extract that could dissolve metal. Excellent. Hypothetically retrieve it. As the crew continued preparations, Lieutenant Patel sidled up to Reynolds. Captain, with all due respect, are you seriously planning to fight an advanced alien armada with hot sauce? Reynolds watched his crew work with pride. Lieutenant, humanity didn't get this far by playing fair. We got here by being weird, unpredictable, and occasionally brilliant. He gestured to the chaotic scene before them. This is humanity's greatest strength. We're too strange to be anticipated. Patel frowned. That's not how military strategy works. Isn't it? What was your first impression of me when we met? She hesitated. That you were disorganized, impulsive, and probably in the wrong career. And now? Patel watched as Ortiz successfully integrated Harper's hot sauce into some kind of aerosol delivery system, while Dr. Voss calculated dispersal patterns. Now I think you're disorganized, impulsive, and possibly insane. She paused, but maybe exactly what we need right now. Reynolds smiled. Exactly. The Zircanians think they understand us. They're about to learn otherwise. The Zircanian flagship, the Indomitable Conquest, was a behemoth that made the Improbable look like a tugboat in comparison. Its hull was covered in what appeared to be ceremonial markings that, according to Dr. Voss's hasty translation, mostly consisted of boasts about previous civilizations they'd conquered. Charming, Reynolds muttered as the Improbable approached under a flag of truce. They're basically flying around in a giant we're compensating for something billboard. Captain, Lieutenant Harper advised, the Universal Translator is active. Maybe don't broadcast your more colorful observations. Right. Open a channel. The view screen flickered to life, revealing not Ambassador Vzork, but a stern-looking Zircanian with elaborate facial ridges and a uniform adorned with so many medals it was a wonder the alien could stand upright. I am Admiral Cross of the Zircanian Empire, the alien announced. You will surrender immediately or be obliterated. Reynolds leaned back in his captain's chair, one leg casually draped over the armrest. Admiral Cross. Love the outfit. Very shiny. I'm Captain Jack Reynolds of Earth, but you probably already knew that. The Admiral's upper eyes narrowed while his lower ones widened an expression that Dr. Voss hastily whispered meant dangerous confusion in Zircanian body language. Your insolence is noted, human. Ambassador Vzork has informed me of your inappropriate behavioral displays. Yeah, about that, Reynolds said, scratching his chin. I think we got off on the wrong foot, or tentacle, or whatever you folks have. How about we start over, maybe over dinner? I'm told humans and Zircanians have very different culinary traditions. Could be educational. Admiral Cross's facial ridges darkened to a deep purple. You mock our diplomatic protocols. Not at all. I'm dead serious. Food diplomacy is a time-honored human tradition. We've resolved countless conflicts over a good meal. Plus, Reynolds added with a wink, I make a mean lasagna. Behind the Admiral, several Zircanian officers were visibly struggling to maintain their composure. One seemed to be consulting a manual titled Human Behavioral Patterns, a comprehensive guide to an incomprehensible species. Captain Reynolds, Cross said through what appeared to be gritted teeth, the Zircanian Empire does not negotiate with species that refuse to acknowledge our superiority. Ah, I see the issue, Reynolds nodded sagely. You want us to grovel? Well, I'm afraid humanity has a strict no-groveling policy. Corporate mandate, you understand. But we do offer a lovely range of passive-aggressive compliments and backhanded flattery if that's of interest. By now, Admiral Cross was practically vibrating with rage. Your species will be an example to the galaxy. Reynolds sighed dramatically. Admiral, I'm trying to be reasonable here. Look, how about this will establish a neutral meeting ground? No weapons, no pretenses, just honest communication. Cross paused, clearly caught off guard by the sudden reasonable suggestion. A neutral meeting, you propose a formal diplomatic summit? Exactly, Reynolds beamed. A summit, very official, much protocol. After what appeared to be an internal struggle, the Admiral grudgingly agreed. Very well. We will meet on the third moon of the sixth planet in this system. Come unarmed, with only 3 representatives. Wonderful. See you in 6 hours. As the transmission ended, Lieutenant Patel stared at Reynolds in disbelief. Captain, what are you doing? Saturn's third moon is a frozen wasteland. I know, Reynolds replied, standing up. Patel, Voss, you're with me. Harper, prepare our special packages. Ortiz, I need that thing we discussed ready in 2 hours. The thing that probably violates 17 different safety protocols. Ortiz asked. That's the one. 6 hours later, Reynolds, Patel, and Dr. Voss stood on the frozen surface of Tethys, one of Saturn's moons. They wore standard-issue environmental suits modified with what Ortiz called surprises. As the Zircanian shuttle landed, a small figure scurried from behind an ice formation and approached the human delegation. Greetings, the alien whispered. It was roughly the size of a human child with translucent skin through which pulsating organs were visible. I am Glex, cultural interpreter for the Zircanians. You're not Zircanian, Dr. Voss observed. Correct. I am Trilaxian. My people serve the Empire as facilitators. You mean spies, Patel said flatly. Glex's skin flushed a pale yellow. I prefer information specialist. The Admiral sent me ahead to warn you that they have no intention of negotiating. This meeting is a pretext to capture your delegation and extract Earth's defensive capabilities. Reynolds nodded thoughtfully. Kinda figured. So why are you telling us this? Because humans fascinate me, Glex admitted, eyes darting nervously toward the shuttle. Your species makes no sense. Your diplomatic archives contain both eloquent peace treaties and documents where your leaders have threatened to, and I quote, kick their butts all the way to next Tuesday. How can one species be so contradictory? It's a gift, Reynolds shrugged. So Glex want to see something really fascinating about humans. The alien's eyes widened with interest. Yes. Reynolds grinned and tapped his communicator. Ortiz, execute Operation Hot Mess. The moment Admiral Kraz and his guards emerged from their shuttle, the human delegation's suit sprayed a fine mist into the air. The Zircanians immediately began coughing and clutching at their breathing apparatus. What is this treachery? Kraz wheezed. Ghost pepper extract, Reynolds explained cheerfully. Turns out your respiratory system really doesn't like it. Don't worry, it's temporary. Consider this negotiation lesson 1. Always have leverage. You said no weapons. Kraz sputtered. This isn't a weapon, it's a condiment. We put this on our food for fun. Lesson 2, humans are weird. Reynolds turned to Glex, who was watching the scene with fascination. Taking notes? The small alien was frantically recording everything on a device. Humans weaponized their food seasonings. Remarkable. As the Zircanians retreated to their shuttle, coughing and cursing, Reynolds called after them, "We're still open to actual negotiations when you're ready to talk like adults. No hard feelings." Admiral Kraz's only response was a gesture that required no translation. Back aboard the Improbable, Lieutenant Patel shook her head in disbelief. Captain, you realize you've probably just escalated this conflict. Temporarily, Reynolds agreed. But we've also learned something valuable. The Zircanians have no sense of humor. They're rigid in their thinking, and they've seriously underestimated us. He grinned. And we've gained an admirer. Glex, who had defected and joined them on their return shuttle, was still recording observations. Humans use chaos as strategy, highly illogical yet surprisingly effective. Must study further. See, Reynolds gestured to the alien. It's diplomatic progress. The Zircanians, as it turned out, had very little appreciation for Reynolds' unique approach to galactic relations. Their response came 3 hours later in the form of an energy weapon that vaporized one of Earth's defensive satellites. "Well, that's just rude," Reynolds remarked, watching the debris scatter across the tactical display. Status report. "They've destroyed orbital defense platform Sigma-3, Lieutenant Patel reported. "Minimal casualties, the crew evacuated when we detected the weapon charging. Earth Command has implemented defensive protocols and civilian shelters are being activated worldwide." Reynolds nodded. "At least they're not going straight for population centers. They want to intimidate us first." He turned to communications. "Harper, is our special package ready?" Lieutenant Harper grinned. "Locked and loaded, Captain. Operation Earworm is ready to deploy." "Excellent. Dr. Voss, your analysis of Zircanian auditory systems?" The xenobiologist consulted her tablet. "Their hearing range extends well beyond human capacity, particularly in lower frequencies. They use subsonic communication as a secondary language during combat." "Perfect. Ortiz, status on the modifications to our communication array?" The engineer gave a thumbs up from his station. "Ready to transmit at frequencies that will make those purple squid faces wish they'd never evolved ears." "All right, people. Execute Operation Earworm." Lieutenant Harper's fingers danced over his console. "Transmitting on all Zircanian frequencies, now." Throughout the Zircanian fleet, every communication channel, every internal speaker, and every command console suddenly began blasting Earth's most annoying musical export, "Never Gonna Give You Up" by Rick Astley, amplified and modified to specifically target Zircanian auditory sensitivities. "Did we just rickroll an alien armada?" Patel asked incredulously. "Tactical rickrolling," Reynolds corrected her. "It's different." On the view screen, they could see Zircanian ships breaking formation as their crews presumably struggled to shut down the sonic assault. 3 smaller vessels actually collided with each other while trying to maneuver. "They're attempting to jam our transmission," Harper reported, switching to alternate frequencies and adding, "Oh, this is evil," adding Baby Shark to the rotation. Dr. Voss winced. "That's a war crime on at least 7 planets." The Zircanian response was swift. A barrage of energy weapons targeted the improbable, rocking the ship violently. "Shields at 62%. Patel called out. "They're not playing around anymore." Reynolds gripped his chair as another blast shook the vessel. "Deploy countermeasures. Ortiz, how's our special sauce delivery system looking?" "Ready to fly, Captain. The drones are loaded with Harper's hot sauce and ready to deploy." "Launch them. Target their main flagship's environmental systems." Dozens of small drones shot out from the Improbable's launch bay, darting between Zircanian vessels like metallic insects. Several were destroyed by point defense systems, but enough reached the flagship to attach themselves to external ventilation ports. "Drones in position," Ortiz confirmed. "Releasing capsaicin payload, now." On the tactical display, they watched as the massive Zircanian flagship's disciplined movement suddenly became erratic. The communication channels still blasting Earth music now also carried what sounded distinctly like alien coughing and swearing. "Captain," Harper called, "we're receiving a transmission from Admiral Cross." On screen. The Admiral appeared, his purple skin now blotchy with darker patches, eyes watering profusely. "Reynolds," he wheezed, "this is barbaric. You've violated every code of civilized warfare." Reynolds leaned forward, his expression calm. "Interesting perspective, Admiral. You outnumber us, outgun us, and declared war over a wardrobe malfunction." Yet you're upset because we're fighting back with hot peppers and bad music. These tactics are unprecedented. Cross sputtered between coughs. That's humanity for you. Unpredictable. Reynolds' voice remained level. And I want to be clear, I'm still not mad. He gestured around the bridge. This is just me being mildly annoyed. You really don't want to see me when I'm actually upset. Admiral Cross's eyes narrowed through his obvious discomfort. Your threats do not intimidate the Zircanian Empire, human. We have conquered systems far more advanced than yours. I'm sure you have, but I bet none of them had our particular brand of crazy. Reynolds smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. We haven't even broken out the really weird stuff yet. The transmission cut off abruptly. Reynolds turned to his crew, all of whom were staring at him with expressions ranging from admiration to concern. Sir, Lieutenant Patel said cautiously, what exactly is the really weird stuff? Reynolds winked. No idea. But they don't know that. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, representatives from 12 different spacefaring civilizations had gathered in an emergency session of the Galactic Conclave to discuss the unfolding situation in the Sol system. The recordings are authentic, confirmed the Andromean ambassador, a crystalline entity that communicated through light pulses. The humans are defending themselves against the Zircanian armada using food additives and rhythmic sound patterns. Impossible, declared the Vorlax representative, whose species resembled sentient clouds of gas. The Zircanians have conquered 17 systems in the last cycle. No pre-FTL civilization could resist them. And yet, interjected the Trilaxian delegate, consulting a datapad, our operative reports that the humans remain, and I quote, disturbingly cheerful about their chances. They continue to insist that they aren't even mad yet. A murmur rippled through the assembled representatives. What could this mean? Asked a reptilian diplomat. Is this a reference to some secret weapon? The Trilaxian shook its head. Unknown. But our operative is fascinated by their approach and has chosen to remain embedded with the humans to study their methods. Troubling, the Vorlax representative sighed, releasing puffs of concerned gas. If the humans defeat the Zircanian Empire through such unorthodox means, it could destabilize the established order. What kind of civilization weaponizes music and food? Perhaps, suggested the Andromean ambassador thoughtfully, we should continue to observe. The humans may prove to be either valuable allies or dangerous adversaries. The conflict with the Zircanians had reached a stalemate. For 3 days, the alien armada had maintained position just beyond Earth's defensive perimeter, occasionally firing warning shots but not committing to a full-scale assault. Meanwhile, Earth's forces had been buying time with increasingly bizarre guerrilla tactics. Captain Reynolds sat in his ready room, sipping from his prized possession, a ceramic mug emblazoned with the words "Galaxy's okayest captain." The coffee inside was a special blend from his hometown in Seattle, one of the few luxuries he allowed himself in space. The door chimed. Enter, Reynolds called. Glix scurried in, the Trilaxian's translucent skin pulsing with excitement. Captain, I've decrypted some of the Zircanian tactical communications. They're preparing for a major offensive. Reynolds sighed, taking another sip of his coffee. Details. They plan to target key Earth infrastructure first, power grids, communication centers, and Glix hesitated. And what? Coffee plantations. Reynolds slowly lowered his mug. I'm sorry, did you say coffee plantations? Yes, Admiral Cross has been studying human behavior patterns and determined that caffeine is a strategic resource for your species. He plans to eliminate your supply lines. For the first time since the crisis began, something dangerous flashed in Reynolds' eyes. That's actually pretty smart of him. There's more, Glex continued, nervously shifting from foot to foot. The attack is scheduled to begin in 1 hour, and... The ship rocked violently, throwing both of them off balance. Reynolds' coffee mug flew from his hand, smashing against the wall and splattering its precious contents across the floor. The intercom blared. "Captain to the bridge. We're under attack." Reynolds stared at the shattered remains of his favorite mug and the puddle of wasted coffee. His expression darkened as he tapped his communicator. "On my way." When Reynolds entered the bridge, the scene was chaotic. Consoles sparked, crew members rushed between stations, and the view screen showed a swarm of Zircanian fighters executing precision strikes against the improbable. Status report. Reynolds barked, all trace of his usual casual demeanor gone. Lieutenant Patel looked up from her damaged tactical station. "They caught us by surprise, sir. Some kind of stealth technology. Shields at 31% and failing. We've lost engines 2 and 3. Where's their flagship?" "Here, sir." Patel highlighted a massive vessel hanging back from the main attack group. "The indomitable Conquest is coordinating but not directly engaging." Reynolds' eyes narrowed. "Cowards. Get me a channel to Admiral Cross. Now." "Sir," Harper called from communications, "we can't establish a connection. They're jamming us with weight. Is that baby shark being played backward?" "They're using our own tricks against us," Reynolds muttered. "Fine. If they want to play dirty," he turned to Dr. Voss. "Doc, remember that biological sample we collected from their shuttle on Tethys?" Dr. Voss nodded. "The Zircanian epidermis sample?" "Yes, I've been analyzing it." "And, though..." A slow smile spread across her face. "They have an interesting allergic response to certain compounds, including caffeine." Reynolds' expression was stone cold. "Lieutenant Ortiz, how much coffee do we have in the ship's stores?" "Standard complement, sir. About 500 kilograms of various blends. Load all of it into the torpedo tubes." The bridge fell silent. Lieutenant Patel cleared her throat. "Sir, did you just order us to weaponize coffee?" "Not all of it," Reynolds clarified. "Save me 1 bag of the good stuff." He looked around at his stunned crew. "What? You heard the man. They destroyed my favorite mug. My mother gave me that mug." The ship rocked again as another volley of Zircanian weapons found their mark. Shields at 17%. An ensign called out. "Sir," Patel said urgently, "with all due respect, I don't think coffee torpedoes are going to." "Lieutenant," Reynolds cut her off, his voice deadly calm. "I have spent the last 3 days being reasonable. I have tried negotiation. I have shown restraint. And what did I get in return? They blew up my coffee mug." He stood straighter and somehow seemed taller than before. "I want to be perfectly clear. Up until now, I wasn't mad. I was annoyed, irritated, perhaps slightly peeved. But now," his eyes glinted dangerously, "now I'm mad." The entire bridge crew froze. Even Glex, who had followed Reynolds from the ready room, shrank back against the wall, skin paling to a transparent white. "Captain," Patel began. "Execute Operation Petty Revenge," Reynolds ordered. "All of it." Ortiz grinned wickedly. "All of it, sir?" "Every last ridiculous, over-the-top, probably court-martial worthy bit of it." The engineer rubbed his hands together. "Aye, Captain. Initiating coffee torpedo loading sequence and activating the other things." Lieutenant Harper turned from his console with a shocked expression. "Sir, Earth Command is hailing us. Admiral Chen wants to know what the hell we're doing." Reynolds straightened his uniform. Tell her we're implementing an unconventional tactical solution based on available resources and psychological warfare principles. You want me to tell her we're shooting coffee at aliens because they broke your mug? Paraphrase as necessary, Lieutenant. As the crew rushed to execute Reynolds' orders, Glex sidled up to Dr. Voss. Is this normal human behavior? The alien whispered. Dr. Voss shrugged. You should see what happens when someone eats his lunch from the common refrigerator. Fascinating, Glex murmured, furiously taking notes. Human rage catalyzed by disruption of caffeine ritual. Must update Trilaxian database immediately. Admiral Cross was feeling quite pleased with himself. The surprise attack on the human vessel had clearly caught them off guard, and their defenses were failing. Soon the human captain who had caused him so much humiliation would be begging for mercy. Admiral, his tactical officer reported, the human vessel appears to be launching projectiles. Cross waved a dismissive tentacle. Primitive weapons. Our shields will hold. Sir, these aren't conventional torpedoes. I'm not sure what they are. On the view screen, dozens of small objects hurtled toward the Zircanian fleet. When they reached their targets, they didn't explode instead. They burst open, releasing clouds of dark brown particles that the ship's environmental systems immediately began to draw in. What is this? Cross demanded. Some kind of biological warfare? Before his officer could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. Sir, unknown substance detected in the air filtration system. The officer began to sneeze violently, his purple skin breaking out in bright green blotches. The effect spread rapidly through the ship as the ventilation system distributed the coffee particles. Within minutes, the bridge was filled with wheezing, sneezing Zircanians, their carefully organized battle formation collapsing into chaos. Incoming transmission from the human vessel, croaked the communications officer, fighting through a fit of sneezing. The view screen activated to show Captain Reynolds, calmly sitting in his command chair, a fresh mug of coffee in his hand. Admiral Cross, Reynolds said pleasantly, I see you're experiencing some discomfort. That would be the finest Arabica blend from Earth's Colombian region. We call it coffee. We drink it for fun. Cross tried to respond with appropriate outrage, but could only manage a series of explosive sneezes. I ought to thank you, actually, Reynolds continued. You've given me the perfect opportunity to demonstrate why the phrase "I'm not even mad yet" should terrify anyone who hears a human say it. He took a sip from his mug. Because what happens next, that's what mad looks like. As if on cue, the improbable unleashed its full arsenal of Reynolds' unconventional tactical solutions. Drones swarmed the Zircanian vessels, attaching themselves to hulls and projecting holograms that made each ship appear to be attacking its allies. The confusion caused several Zircanian captains to fire on their own fleet. Meanwhile, the improbable itself executed a maneuver that Ortiz had dubbed the Reynolds Rolling Thunder, a series of apparently random engine burns and course changes that somehow, impossibly, allowed the damaged Earth vessel to slip between the Zircanian ships unscathed. Firing precisely targeted shots at their most embarrassing but non-lethal weaknesses, communication arrays, decorative command insignia, and in one case, an admiral's personal bathroom. Throughout it all, Earth forces coordinated with the improbable, implementing Reynolds' strategy with brutal efficiency. It was chaos, beautiful, meticulously planned chaos. You see, Admiral, Reynolds explained to the increasingly distraught Cross, humans have a saying, don't get mad, get even. But I've always preferred, get mad and get even. Much more satisfying. 3 hours later, the once mighty Zircanian armada hung in disarray around Earth. No ships had been destroyed. Reynolds had been explicit about minimizing casualties, but none were operational either. Systems had been scrambled. Crews were incapacitated by allergy attacks, and command structures had collapsed. On the bridge of the indomitable conquest, Admiral Kraz slumped in his command chair, surrounded by sniffling officers and blinking error messages. "Admiral," his second-in-command wheezed, "the human captain is hailing us again." "Put him through," Kraz muttered in defeat. Reynolds appeared on screen, looking remarkably refreshed given the circumstances. Behind him, his crew was celebrating, though Lieutenant Patel maintained her professional demeanor with only the slightest hint of a smile. "Admiral Kraz, good to see you're still with us. Feeling a bit more open to diplomacy now?" Kraz glared through watery eyes. "The Zircanian Empire does not surrender." "Of course not," Reynolds agreed smoothly. "This isn't surrender. It's a strategic reassessment of priorities. Besides, I'm not asking for surrender. I'm inviting you to dinner." "Dinner?" Kraz echoed incredulously. "Yes, no hot sauce, no coffee, no tricks. Just a meal between representatives of two powerful civilizations who got off on the wrong foot. Or tentacle. Whatever." Reynolds leaned forward. "Consider it carefully, Admiral. You've seen what we do when we're irritated, and what we do when we're mad. Wouldn't you like to see what we're like?"